Hello, EJ.
Hi, Tony.
Welcome to University Challenge, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, supporting all your great work as well.
Oh,
I'm very
likewise.
excited.
Well, this is going to be a good one. We know each other, but for the listeners today and the listeners to come, could you share your full name and what it is that you do today?
Okay, yes. Hi, Tony's listeners. My name is Emma Jane Taylor. I am an advocate for survivors of child sex abuse. I am the founder of a wellbeing company called the Works Company, and I'm also involved in corporate training and mentoring. So an array of activities, but they all sort of really link to well-being, I feel, whether it be emotional, mental, or physical.
Fantastic. Truly a portfolio career. We will
Mm.
come on to quite how you got to where you are today, but let's go back to your memories of secondary school. What was secondary school like for you?
Second, I don't have a lot of memory from those times in my life. It wasn't a time that I particularly enjoyed because obviously I was going through my own trauma and difficulties. Um, and I think having started school with some probably good expectations, within about a year, those expectations had slipped. So my memory of school is headmistress's office, with a cigarette in my hand, regularly being put on detention, regularly suspended, often put into isolation, because I was so naughty. I think they thought I'd burn down the school,
Right.
which I, of course, wouldn't have done. But back in
No.
those days, I think I was so unpredictable that they just didn't know what to do with me. So I was isolated from 9 in the morning until 3.
Wow.
And I had to sit with either the headmistress or the deputy head. And if I needed to go to the bathroom, they would have to take me there and wait for me and bring me back. They'd take me to make my lunch. And so I had weeks like that, weeks where I was allowed back into the school on a report where you had to get all the
Yeah.
teachers to
Yeah.
sign. I'm sure everyone's done those
I've been
reports.
on report. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so it wasn't, I think, I don't remember it ever being, it was such a complex time. And I look back on it, I don't look back on it with fond memories. I look back on it with, I'm not even sure anxiety is the right word. I think the memories are that it was just a sad time.
Mm. And did you continue to study for your GCSEs or equivalent while you were there?
Yeah, I was the second year of GCSEs.
Yeah.
I'm a 1972 baby. That makes me 50, and you don't have to go and do the maths if you're watching.
Yeah.
Um, and I I was also a child performer, so professional
Ah,
child performer. So I would quite often have to take time out of school, which meant that then got behind on a lot of activities. So I wanted to take, I don't know, say geography, and I wasn't. Oh no, I wanted to take history. And they said no, 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 you've got to take geography. So they seem to have a lot more control over things that they wanted me to take as opposed to me taking them. But I did do GCSEs, but I was in such a bad sort of place that it got to the point where I wrote my name on the top of the paper, and that was it, because
yeah.
that's about as much as I cared for school. Of course, the person who was hurting the most there was me, but
Yeah.
that I was in so angry that that one paper I copied a friend and copied her name. uh, so so yeah, so I wasn't given treated very well, and therefore I just didn't then respond very well, and that meant that I failed pretty much all of my exams, apart from physical education. I'm sure it would come as no surprise because I was very interested in sports.
Mm,
And that was probably my saving grace at school, was that I could do hockey and tennis and
yeah.
swimming, and I could release those emotions and that anger into my physical activities. And then I really liked sort of the biology side of it,
Yeah.
the anatomy and physiology. So that's sort of where passion for sports started really for me.
And you mentioned there that you were a child performer, something that I didn't know. It just because I guess you were working while you were studying. How did that come about?
So I've been dancing since I was 4,
Hmm.
and I kind of progressed, and dancing became something somewhat of a passion of mine. And then I was put forward for various shows and auditions, and I was very fortunate to have um, been cast in some of the productions, and therefore, it meant that if a professional show came up, I'd be out for maybe 8 weeks on a
Yeah.
rotational with another team. But of course, you've got rehearsals and things like that. So it's
Mm.
all about sort of getting permission, which you still have to do today. But I think, you didn't
Mm.
have as tighter restrictions, I don't think. I might be wrong. I was also quite often in My Guy magazine in
Oh,
their
yeah.
photo story.
Wow. Wow.
And I did a lot of activities sort of during my school years, I think I did sort of 3 or 4 productions where I'd have to sort of leave school.
Hmm.
Um, and then I did the magazines. And then when I left school, I was a professional dancer in cabaret.
Wow. So, there's so many questions that I have for you. One is that I think that people of our generation will remember like the photo stories in those magazines that were targeted
Yes.
at young women. So you were actually in one of those. We aspired to
I
be in
know.
them.
I wish I'd had that. I've still got them. I was in quite a few.
Yeah,
Um, and I then got some of my friends to join. I got to know the photography team and the
yeah,
team, and then I got some of my friends in. My mum came and did one. My brother did one.
yeah.
Um, and it was great.
Wow. Um, so there's that. We could go down a whole rabbit hole with that. I'm interested to know, um, because I think, and you and I both know, and I know more of your story, than some of the people listening, but when you have a young person that is demonstrating challenging behavior, it doesn't come from nowhere. And I wonder if your school was at all equipped to support you and help you versus placing you in isolation.
Well, I think the simple answer is no. I think, we're talking back in, my senior school would have been 84 when I started, and I would
Yeah,
have left not long, just before, well, 6 years, so just before the 1990s. Um, and bad behavior back then was just bad behavior. There was
yeah.
no kind of beyond that. You were a
Mm,
naughty child. I mean, they knew about I think because my father had left me as well,
mm,
and that had been sort of documented and brought up.
mm,
But that's, I think, as far as they were concerned, that was as far as those problems went, and that was horrific enough.
mm,
And so that's what they dealt with, which is what everyone dealt with. So they just thought I was just a child that had fallen out because, had been abandoned, had fallen out of, the life really because of that. And
mm,
I'd gone from nice child to horrible child. But obviously it was much more sinister than that. But that was how they dealt with it. But when I say dealt with it, they
mm.
didn't deal with it. So
No.
when I was being naughty, they were dealing with me by putting me on report, putting me in isolation, putting me on
Mm,
detention, suspending me. I got sent to juvenile delinquent like a psychiatrist labeled
yeah.
juvenile delinquent. And I was right. I mean, there's no denying that
Mm,
I was that child, but I wasn't just that child. I had
mm,
become that child. I was a really lovely young girl going through life as as all most of my peers were, just happy go lucky, enjoying world, and then boom, it fell
yeah.
apart. And instead of then someone saying EJ clearly is in a bad state because of ABC, what can we do to help her?
Mm,
I got reprimanded, and you just cannot reprimand people for bad behavior because behind that, yes, you do have to have boundaries. Absolutely, you do have to
yeah.
have boundaries and discipline, but you have to also understand why that behavior is happening. And we weren't equipped in the 80s to do that, or the 90s. I think, it's really only becoming the millenniums that we've had those conversations and started looking behind it. And I think we're a lot better now. I think we're still a long way to go because, we've missed so many opportunities with so many children who've died, sadly. But we're much more further forward now than we were when I was a child in the 80s. But I think when I sort of look back, I think if only someone had sort of said, look, PJ, obviously we have to, discipline you because, you set off the fire alarm again, or you were on, A, B, or C. What else can we do? Because you're clearly not happy.
I do. You sparked a memory there in me relating to fire, where at my secondary school, we discovered that when you unroll the fire hose, it automatically starts going off. So there was a big fire hose in one of the corridors. Quite a lot of
didn't
people.
know that back in the day.
Yeah, terrible. So you got your PGCSE. What was the expectation, or what advice did you get as to next steps?
Okay, so when you've gone through trauma, one of the things that happens to you is that you dissociate and you start finding ways to cope. And one of those ways to cope is to dump down where you are in life. So chunks of my life have become just lost. I have no memory. I have no recollection. I have no, I don't remember going to it wasn't citizens advice, but it always felt like citizens advice when you went in to talk to your tutors. There was a terrapin set up in our school where you'd go and talk about career advice. I remember once going into this room, I don't know what we talked about, I don't know what the conversations were, and I don't remember ever having that conversation again or speaking to anybody. But by the time I'd left school, of course, trauma and PTSD and delayed onset of many of my other difficulties had started setting in. So there's chunks of my life. I mean, I can remember being at school, but I just don't remember being with people. I don't remember friends. I don't remember, I recently had some conversations with some friends who I've reconnected with, and they've showed me loads of pictures. It's actually quite upsetting because I don't remember it. But, I clearly did have some nice time. So to answer your question, I don't have any kind of recollection of those times. I know that I was a good PE student, but again, they pushed me, and when they pushed me, I pushed back, and I was like, no, I'm not going to. I was really good at hockey. I was really good at some of the tennis sports, and as soon as they started saying we're going to push you into county levels and things like that, I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And I'd pull back.
And you did find a career, you said, in cabaret. How did you do that? How did that come about?
So I know a lot of people in the performing arts world. And there was a troupe, cameo dancers, and who were looking for dancers. And I went along, had an audition, got the job, and then we just, rehearsed. And then we'd go from everywhere down to the south coast of the UK, up to Scotland, east, west, wherever the jobs were, we'd go. Sometimes they were a few a week, sometimes it was one a week, but we were generally quite busy with work at that time. But for me, it was more than that. It was so, it was so nice to see my dancing friends and have a bit of a laugh. Buy loads of sweets and drink coffee, because that's what we do with dancers.
You don't eat sweets and coffee.
Cigarettes, sweets and coffee.
Or
that's what I don't want to, but that's what I did anyway. And that was sort of like a chunk of my life, sort of, I left school at 16, and that was sort of from around 18, 19 for a couple of years, which was just really good fun, actually. And I think that's all I needed. I didn't want anything too taxing, I guess.
And there's a lot to be said for that as well, I think, in having some fun and going off and not doing the big career thing immediately. What
I think it's a brilliant idea to do.
Yeah. Where did you go? Where did that take you? So you've done a couple of years dancing and eating sweets and cigarettes.
Smoking.
EJ, oh my God.
Oh, I used to smoke loads. I'd be through 20 fags a day
Yeah.
easily.
Ah,
Can't
it
imagine it
is.
now. Where does it take me?
Yeah.
Um, well, I kind of messed around. So when I'd left school, I'd gone in. I became a hairdresser.
Ah, okay.
I
Yep.
I left school with nothing and decided to go and take an apprenticeship with the hairdressers. Got dermatitis,
Yeah.
and had to leave.
Yeah.
Then I was dancing and temping, and I had set up a little um, business sort of later on in hairdressing. So if you want your hair cut, I can do that as well
Yeah.
while tap dancing
Yeah.
and writing books. So but I it took me to Spain actually.
Yeah.
I went, and when I was around 19, I was starting to nanny as well.
Hmm.
And you know, 19 isn't old, but for a dancer, it can be, because you're challenged with all the, 19, 20, 21, you've got all the youngsters coming in as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so I decided, instead of doing dancing, I'd become a nanny, and I
Hmm.
nannied. And I loved nannying. That was one of the greatest things of my career,
Mm.
because just working with young children and taking them out, and just having fun with them, meeting other nannies and taking them out. And then one family I worked with used to go to Spain, so I used to go out there with them, and then I started staying on a bit longer,
Hmm.
and then a bit longer, and then a bit longer.
Yeah.
And then the third year, I was like, right, I'm done now. I've drunk my way through Spain.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't an irresponsible nanny, but I was partying a lot as well. So the third
Yeah.
year, I probably wasn't nannying so much. I was more hairdressing. Oh, I did some hairdressing
Yeah.
in the beach. I'd have chairs lined up, and I'd be
Yeah.
cutting hair just to make money and to
Yeah.
help me live out there, really.
Yeah. So entrepreneurial and and risk.
Survival, I think.
Yeah, well, this I was going to say risky. It kind of shows, yeah, like that survival instinct. I'm in a foreign country. I need to make money. I know how I can make money.
Yes. And I worked in
Um,
bars and clubs, and all sorts of other things
yeah,
that just. In fact, I earned a fortune when I was in Spain, because I worked for one of the bigger families who owned a lot of sort of the island, a lot of the villages where I was, and they paid you. My rent was low,
mm,
and then I got my food and my drinks all included.
mm,
So actually, and then with the hairdressing and all the other things, because of course back then you could just keep earning lots of money out there, not so much
yeah,
now. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, I came back with money in my pocket, which was really great. But it was just a fun time. I made some great friends. Some of my friends
mm,
are still, like, from those years.
mm,
They were, very. I felt privileged to have been able to do that, and I sort of learned a few more skills, like you say, business skills, entrepreneurial skills, survival,
yeah. And actually, that was
take
going to be my
risks.
next question. Was kind of what did you learn from that experience of being self-sufficient, spinning lots of different plates,
I
working in a
learned to
foreign?
be dynamic,
Yeah,
I think. And when the chips are down, and my room was literally, I lived with a diver, deep sea diver. We weren't
yeah,
not a relationship, we were just friends.
yeah,
And I rented one of his rooms, and and I can still see it. There was a blanket up at the window for my
yeah,
curtain.
yeah,
And then on the floor, there was a mattress on the floor, and
yeah,
with just a sheet over it, and a sheet for me, and one pillow. And then
yeah,
there was this really clapped out dresser where my clothes, that was it. I had no hanging space, no nothing. I had suitcases on the floor. Sometimes you'd
yeah,
have cockroaches in there.
yeah.
And that was sort of our world. But it was, that I was like, it didn't matter. Would I
Mm,
want to do it now? Probably not. If I had to, I would.
yeah.
But yeah, it really sort of challenged me to, you know, I couldn't not be in Spain without a roof over my head. That was the cheapest option.
Yeah.
And I needed to have to make sure I kept that roof over my head every, I think I had to pay weekly then, so every
Yeah.
week. So, you know, it didn't matter how I earned the money, just I could earn the money. But it also taught me to, I think it really truly taught me then to really focus on the work that I was good at,
Hmm.
that, you know, made me employable,
Yeah.
and not just settle for something that, you know, earns good money, and that's what everyone else wants you to do.
Yeah. So what did you do when you came back to the UK with money in your
Mm.
pocket? Which, like you
I
say, not a lot of people
detoxed.
do. You detox, okay? Yeah.
I mean, I say all this. I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since those days.
Mhm.
I detoxed. I had money in my pocket. I was
Yeah.
about 21 when I came home, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and get a proper job now and see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And I went and worked. I got a proper job working for a company called Danker UK,
Hmm.
who
Yeah.
were the official sponsors for the Grand Prix. I think for the Williams team for the Grand Prix. Um, and I'm a big Grand Prix girl. I love the Grand Prix. So
Okay.
I love the idea that I was working for one of their sponsors. Anyway, I was the selling printer warranties. I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't sound any duller, does it? I mean, printer warranties. Here's
Yeah.
EJ, just, you know, bit of an entrepreneurial hairdresser, nanny, bar worker, restaurant worker, jack of
Perfect
all trades.
salesperson.
Now I am selling printer warranties, and
Yeah.
I went into the job, um, you know, quite bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking, oh, I've got a great job. I had a great basic salary.
Hmm.
I had great commission. They gave me a fabulous new car,
Mm.
a phone, and that, you know, at 21, 22, that's like, wow. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, we're talking 1994 here, and that
Yeah.
was like, that was a big thing. Anyway, I worked, my colleague, a male colleague, was older than me, and I think I'd gone in on probably a good or better package than he'd started, and I don't think he was very
Mm.
happy about that. So him and
No.
I sort of clashed a bit. And then one day I just thought, I hate this.
Mm.
I hate this ringing people up. Oh, you need to renew your warranty. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'd earned a fortune. I'd done a really good job, and I was
Mm.
good at the sales side of that.
Mm.
But I hated it. I absolutely hated it. So I had lunch with my stepfather one week, and I just don't want to do this anymore. And I really felt, you know, if I go back to what I was saying in Spain, I felt like I was doing this job because it was expected of me to go
Mm.
on to do a good job. All my brothers have gone in the corporate world; they were all succeeding. But I hated it. I hated it. I hated the guy that I worked. Oh, sorry, I don't hate the guy. I just didn't. I didn't get on with him, and you know,
Yeah.
21, 22 sort of thing. It
Yeah.
was just not a happy place to be.
Mm.
So I told my boss, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, we'll do anything. We'll move the world for you to stay." And that was actually quite nice to hear that,
Yeah.
because, you know, I didn't really sort of feel like I'd enjoyed it, but then he clearly thought, you know, I was doing well.
Mm.
Um, and I think everyone in my family was like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "I don't know, but I just want to leave, and I miss my dancing, and I miss fitness, and
Mm.
I'm not destined to sit behind a desk with a phone in my hand, ringing up to sell warranties for printers." So I left, gave up my car, gave up my great big salary, my commission,
Yeah.
my phone, everything gone. Oof.
Yeah. And that's
But
quite
it was the right decision.
yeah, so it's and this is I suppose an interesting point, because for a lot of people, and this is okay, it is that I would like a secure job where I get the car, the healthcare, the pension, the
Yeah.
phone, the consistency, I know what I'm going to earn every month. But you had it and you realized that it wasn't for you.
No, I've never had it again. You know, but
Right.
actually,
Yeah.
I've never had consistency again. But
Yeah.
I work better because of that. I'm pretty
Yeah.
certain.
Well, what did you do then? Jay, you got, there's no card, no phone. Where the hell is your commission? What did you
So
do?
now I now go back to college
Yeah,
myself, finish
right. Yeah.
off my hairdressing course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working in a salon. I'm just doing it while I'm temping.
Hmm.
And so I was temping at like a company called Trend Communications.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
I was temping at Marriott's. I did some temping at Dun& Bradstreet. I did
Yeah.
some temping for the body. It was the equivalent of the Body Shop.
Hmm.
I worked in pubs. I worked as a I did everything I could. I then set up a business called EJ's Hairdressing, and I became a
Hmm.
mobile hairdresser as well.
Yeah.
Uh, but I wasn't really sort of enjoying it. I really missed my dancing, so I decided to take on actually a local theatre group said, EJ, would you choreograph a show out of nowhere actually? And
Yeah.
I said that I would, and it was me and my girl. Anyway,
Oh,
from choreographing this, I was doing tap in there. Now, tap is one of my specialities,
yeah.
um, and something that I really, Michael Flatley move over kind of thing. That was my thing,
Yeah.
and out the way,
Yeah.
Flatley. Um, so I then set up a tap class, and I was tapping, I was temping, I was doing a bit of
Hmm.
hairdressing, and I'm now earning great money because
Yeah.
everything's like cash coming in. It was a
Yeah.
real cash cow of a world that I lived in. Um, and then the classes were packed, they had waiting lists, and I set up
Hmm.
another one. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and do some more fitness. So I went and studied fitness, and I've become highly trained in from qualifications American College of Sports Medicine to my personal fitness level 3, nutrition and weight management.
Hmm.
Um, and I just then studied and studied and studied because I thought actually everyone was expecting me. When I left school, one of the things my headmistress said to me was, "Yeah, EJ, you're just a failure. You're going nowhere." That was my parting comment. So that stuck in my head, and I just
Mm.
felt that that's what people thought of me. I couldn't hold down a job. But actually, while all these people were thinking that, I was creating and crafting and building great tools
Mm.
for for my life and my professional world. So I went off and trained in fitness, and then I became more, substantially set up with EJ's Dance and Fitness, it was called.
Yeah.
And I would run activities in a couple of the local towns close to where I live. And then I joined an exclusive gym where we would my boss actually there, God, I hated her. I love her now. She became my mentor in the end, but she was such a tough
Oh,
boss.
that's
And
interesting.
we were training select, high profiles, and that's why she was a tough boss. So I got great training, I got great skills, I got great qualifications. So from those sort of years, 23, 24, 25, um, was really, you know, securing me as someone who could start dabbling in business. I could really sort of start looking at the activities I was doing self-employed with my classes and
Mm.
my training and expanding clients, understanding, spreadsheets,
Yeah.
marketing. But when I look back to all the temping I'd been doing, I
Mm.
had an A to Z of um, kind of careers really through my temping, from
Yeah.
accounts to I worked at Red Row Homes for years,
Okay.
sales to marketing to
Yeah.
telesales to telemarketing. I temped with a company, Marriott's, and did telemarketing with them. Within
Hmm.
6 months, I became their manager.
Mm.
So I then started running the international teams. So I'd had all this great experience. I hadn't realized how important it was until now. And it's like, okay, it's
Mm.
starting to help me with spreadsheets and marketing and sales and accounts and
Mm.
la 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 la. And then when I was 27, I got the opportunity to set up a performing arts school for
Yeah.
kids. And that was 23 years ago now. And that's
Wow.
still going strong. Well, not as
Oh,
strong because of COVID, but we're still
yeah.
going.
But that's great. One thing I'm really interested to know, because you talked about your former boss who became a mentor. What what was it that initially made you sort of clash or resist her style of management to someone that you look to as a mentor?
Well, I think when I was working with her, I was in my early 20s. I'd come off,
Mm.
I come out of sales and, big jobs and traveling around, I knew it all, right? I mean, you know it all.
Yeah.
But you don't know anything. And
Mm.
now I'm working with this woman who is very talented. And we had some mornings I'd have to get up at 4:30 and I'd have to be in my car at 5:15, and it'd be, you couldn't be a minute past 6 o'clock. You couldn't, um, and that, not only was I a personal trainer in the gym, I was cleaning, I was tidying, I was having to do lots of things with paperwork, and but I had to do it on someone else's schedule.
Right.
And I'd
Okay.
become a bit used to doing my own schedules.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if it was a clash. I just didn't feel like she had, maybe I just didn't think she had enough empathy. But then I kind of look at her and I think actually she was so brilliant, because it wasn't about empathy, right? She was running a business with high profile
Mm.
people who wanted to be trained.
Mm.
We were working with there was no time to mess around. You had to be
Mm.
focused on the job in hand with the people. Some you have to be, slightly sensitive with and handle carefully.
Mm.
And so she was helping you develop skills for communication, for
Mm.
paperwork, for tight, so actually what she taught me in those years was valuable.
Yeah.
um, and she, she is like such an empathetic person, and she's a really
Mm.
kind lady. And but I see that now as a 50-year-old woman.
Yeah.
I didn't see that as a 20-year-old woman. So
Yeah.
what she gave me, I feel, was just so valuable as a professional woman now to what I'm doing with my life. And obviously I do have people who work with me. And of course, I've taken a lot of what I've taught from her, but I've got my own spin on things as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't that I clashed. I just think I was just of a 20-year-old, confused,
Mm.
unsettled woman,
Mm.
who just didn't want to be told. But actually, I
Mm.
learned how important it was to work together as a team.
Yeah. Wow. So you've got your performing arts school when that's established. Um, how do the other parts of your portfolio come into play?
So obviously setting up stage Rex was, a big thing, but it wasn't a full-time job.
Yeah. Okay.
So I did need to find ways to make ends meet. So I carried on temping.
Hmm.
Um, I also, like I said, I was doing all the fitness stuff as well.
Yeah.
So while I was doing all the fitness stuff, I started sort of building up my own clientele there.
Hmm.
And, the temping, I might have been temping 5 days a week, then doing my performing arts school, maybe 2 afternoons a week, and my
Okay.
personal training at weekends, and maybe some classes in the week. And then
Yeah.
it started to get busier and earn enough money for me to drop one of the temping days.
Yeah.
And so I'd have 4 days temping, and then one day doing personal training, and then classes, and then and then
Mm.
it kind of grew like that. So, I'd lose a day temping, and then I'd be like, oh, I need to go and earn enough money to cover that day. And
Yeah.
so it was just sort of like taking things away and then adding in things from the business. And I would say that probably took the next 5 years really to start,
Right.
you know, understanding how that business was going to work, and
Mm.
also understanding that I would need to speculate to accumulate. And there's only one of me, but if
Yeah.
I wanted to grow it in any way, I'd have to find people far more talented than me, which is not an easy thing to do when when you think you're the only one who can do all that. But actually, then you soon realise, do
Mm.
you know what? There's far more talented people out there than me.
Mm.
Um, and we've all got our talents. So,
Yeah.
it's now going, right, who do I bring in? And
Yeah.
who is going to reflect what I have put into the business. And not only do the people I work with now reflect that, but they bring so much more to the business. And that's obviously been one of my biggest lessons, is how important and vital talented people are to your life. And I couldn't
Yeah.
have done that 20 years ago,
No,
because like, I
you've
mean,
been
I
doing it
was
all
like,
by
move over
yourself.
Michael Flatley.
Yeah. Just chasing him out of town with his
Yeah.
fast legs and completely still top.
Yes.
I don't know, but he did a bit of that, didn't he?
Couple
Um,
hops.
yeah. So your like works branding, what did that come to incorporate? Because you had stage work, or you have
Yeah, so
stage
I had
work.
stage works, we have nutritious works. I then decided to open two other parts of the works, and both of which are sort of on pause now because of COVID and everything. One was called She Networks, and it was a networking company for women.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was in our local area in Oxfordshire, and then we took it to London as well.
Mhm.
Um, Both hugely successful. I worked again incorporated. I worked with a girl called Susan Cabani, and we worked with lots of other women in the local areas and in London to make that such a great success. So we enjoyed that. And then one of the things I'd wanted to do, and one of the things that I have always stuck by, is if I really want to do something, you have to just do it. Doesn't
Mm.
matter how it works, just do it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, find a new way to go around it. Or if it didn't,
Mm.
if it didn't work and you didn't like it, get rid of it.
Yeah.
But don't. The only person who I used to think, oh, if it doesn't work, everyone's going to think that I failed. But no one cares really.
Yeah.
No one really thinks like that, and the only
Mm.
person who will have that emotion is you. So one of the things I wanted to do was take my fitness and
Yeah.
go back to Spain,
Hmm.
because that's obviously a place where I'd enjoyed so many years. I was now not drinking, not smoking, not taking
Mm.
drugs, not doing anything to, you know, pull me back and down in life, really, because
Mm.
it was. And I thought I'll go back to Spain because that's obviously where a big turning point in my life.
Yeah.
So I called up some contacts and got this amazing villa, and we
Yeah.
created a company called Ocean Works. So
Yeah.
we took the fitness activities, we took diet, nutrition, and we did a couple of years of that in
Wow.
Spain and also in the UK.
Yeah.
And then COVID, and then everyone thought Brexit was a good idea, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So
Well, like you
thank you
say,
to all
yeah,
those Brexiters.
you can't just hop over to Spain, France, and just earn some money.
You can't
And
just work there anymore. It's just
no,
but
no,
anyway, so that's kind of those were so I had Stage Work, Nutritious Works, She Networks, and Ocean Works.
yeah,
And I was loving all of them. And then obviously the world changes, and as it was changing, you have to change with it. So who knows? I mean, maybe one day I will bring back some of the activities that we were doing then. There's so many networking companies out there for women.
yes,
I
yeah.
don't,
There's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah,
But one thing we are starting to do is network, because we've created through some of our own business here, is a dance hub for adults, which is ticking
oh,
lots of boxes because obviously my team are really heavily involved in that. I love dancing,
yeah,
so it's allowed us to come back. So we're looking at sort of doing some network, like 3 or 4 networking events in the years for people who love to dance and who can come and
yeah,
join us and have a healthy glass of water and a banana and do some classes.
yeah. And I made a note about, you sort of mentioned there's that kind of, JFDI, just flaming do it. Um,
Yes.
when it comes to having an idea and executing on that, but also when it comes to stopping something and
Yes.
realizing, and I guess it takes a good deal of confidence and a self-awareness to say it doesn't matter if I stop, fine. And yet nobody is going to go, oh, you had that thing and you're not doing it anymore. It was a
Yes.
failure.
Yes. And I had that emblazoned across me that I would be a failure.
Yeah.
But actually it's been my success to be able to go, right, I've done we've done lots of events over the years with the performing arts school and the fitness stuff. So we've done loads of events that were really successful, maybe for 2 or 3 years, and then I kind of think the novelty wears off, and then instead of like bleeding that dry, you go, right, stop, refresh, change it
Yeah.
up, throw another product out there or another event. And so
Yeah.
it's been my success. And even like obviously now with the COVID years, things are hard for everybody in business, things are hard. And I'm okay to say it's hard for us because we are in an environment where performing arts and well-being and fitness really did suffer through COVID. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I quite like that challenge. That's why I say, I've not had a consistent salary
Mm.
since I left Anchor UK and my mobile phone and my nice car.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it for the world. I have friends who are like, oh my God, EJ, we just couldn't know that we couldn't do that, we just
No.
couldn't do that. But that's how I exist. That's it. I fire up because of that kind of opportunity to see where I can go and challenge myself.
Yeah. And it feels like, I guess, the right time to ask you about your advocacy work and when you wrote your book. Could you sort of share that process with me or with
Yeah,
everybody, not just for me?
with everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'd gone along into my career, and I had achieved some great things over the years, and I was about 40 years old when That's TV, a local TV station had asked if they could do an interview on me as a woman in business.
Mm.
So I went along because I always say yes to everything, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you never do it again. So I said yes, went along, had this interview, and then afterwards they were like, "Oh, we really enjoyed working with you. Someone's going on maternity leave.
Mm.
Would you be interested in presenting a wellbeing show?" Knowing my history, I said, "Yeah, of course. 3 months, 4 months, that was fine." I was there for about 4 years,
Mm.
and I had developed more of my presenting skills. Obviously, it continued to build my business and establish with my business. Um, and then one day I thought, do you know what? I feel a bit of a fraud. Here I am, 40 years old, 41, maybe a bit older now, 43. And I have, I guess there's another bigger question here. What is success? So I built up quite a success around me, but success to me wasn't monetary.
Mm.
Success was I, I had not become the failure my headmistress had told me that I would be.
Mm.
And maybe I chased that label for quite a few years before being able to accept that I didn't need to do that. I could drop it. And then
Mm.
I kind of sat there and thought, here I am interviewing people about their trials and tribulations in life. And everyone thinks that I'm just this, perfect, got no problems,
Mm.
history or other. And of course I did. So one day I thought, right, Venus magazine asked if they could do a feature on me
Oh
as a
yeah.
woman in business.
Hmm.
And they put me on their front cover. And I said, yes, you can. But I feel this is probably a good time for me to dip my toe into my own realities, and shared my story of being sexually abused as a child from 9 through to 16. And also that my biological father had left me when I was around 11, 12 years old, just not long after I started school.
Mm.
So the school that I'd gone to we chose the school because it was closer to his house. And a year in,
Ah.
and he dumped me. Of course, it was really hard because I
Mm.
wasn't allowed to see him. Yet
Mm.
my school was literally past his front door, and it was, he was such a wonderful man up until that point. Very funny, very kind. Very, they end up being so complex that my heart was
Mm.
completely broken, shattered, in fact. And I was a sitting target to be groomed and abused. I didn't care. I didn't care enough for me. I didn't care enough for anyone or anything. And so those years were very painful, very dark, very complex. And then I obviously, through PTSD, memory loss, dissociation, I had various disorders and addictions that came off the back of that. I was drinking alcohol and taking drugs quite heavily from the age of 13. And I carried on doing that until probably sort of like early 20s, when I sort of had my own sort of epiphany, and that's when I stopped everything. And I haven't, like 30 years, I've been clean, changed my life, moved things around, and went into therapy. So when my businesses started, when I'd come back from Spain, I was like, right, I need to sort myself out. After I left that wonderful job with the phone in the car, I went into therapy. And then suddenly I'm now on the sofa and I'm thinking, right, I've got to share my story. So I shared my story in the magazine. They did this big event at the football stadium, Medeski Stadium.
Yeah.
I was their speaker. But they did a video of me, and I hadn't even appreciated this. But before I went on, there was this big screens of videos of me. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to vomit. I felt as sick as a dog.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? Anyway, I got up on the stage. I did my bit. Um, I thought I was going to die on the stage. I was so nervous because when you are sharing a good 30 years of trauma with a whole load of people you don't know, it was
Yeah.
terrifying. And I was shaking like a leaf. But the next day, my inbox was flooded with people who were very grateful that I'd spoken up and wanted to, applaud me for that. People wanting to help me now on the next stage, build websites for me. Survivors, the most important part of this conversation was I wanted to, if I could give someone their hope, even if it was one person, and I never spoke again, that would have been worth it. So I had lots of survivors coming forward saying, you've encouraged me now, thank you. I'm going to go and get help, or I'm going to go and speak up, or I'm going to ABC. And that was the reason I did it. So, it was great that people were offering to help me on the first part of my advocacy role. And of course, then I published my book, Don't Hold
Yeah.
Back, which
Yeah.
documents my story, but also highlights how I went from, the trauma to successful women. And like I say, successful to me is not monetary. It's the fact that I'm here having this conversation and not 6 foot under or in prison, which is what most people thought I'd be by 20.
And
So
I
that
read
is,
your book. And what stood out for me was that you had put throughout it kind of practical tips as well. So there's the just the sharing of your story and being, courageous enough to do that. But what I thought was, I don't know that different is the right word, but what I hadn't expected actually was that you had tips throughout on ways in which, if you were having similar struggles or, struggles in your life, you could, like things that had helped you.
yes, and that's so important to me. I thought speaking out would car crash my career, but I
Yeah.
didn't care anymore because I wanted to do just that. I wanted to give back someone their hope, someone to know that they're not alone, that they can get through it. And if you do feel like this, why don't you look at doing things that, it's not about telling people to do it, it's about challenging people's thought process. So they might think a bit differently about a situation. And I learned that from a fantastic team of therapists, from psychotherapists, psychodynamic, hypnotherapists, psychologists, acupuncturists, holistic
Yeah.
treatments. I did an A to Z of therapy, regressive therapy, and but it's all helped me to become a strong enough woman to be able to say that I wasn't the failure. It wasn't me that failed. And of course, that's the lesson now I take forward is that, we need to listen and look behind a child because the bad behavior, you see it all the time now, right? And it's quite scary
Yes.
now in this
Yeah.
world that we're living in. But what's behind that? What's behind those stories? And so that's really sort of why I then sort of stepped forward to do all of that, was to give back. It didn't car crash my career.
Mm.
If in any ways it's enhanced it, because it's allowed me to, I'm again, I'm not talking monetary, it's allowed me to step forward as an advocate, become more confident in my own world, in my work, as a speaker, as a commentator, as an author, as someone who can signpost people on. I mean, I have a huge collection of people. I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a therapist, but I know a lot of people who can help you. And so I take great pride in being able to offer that to vulnerable people. And I think people would be surprised if um if they saw my inboxes
Mm.
and the amount
How
of people
does
who contact me.
and it sort of leads into a question I was going to ask you. How does that advocacy work? What does that look like in terms of the kind of things that you do? Because I guess there's a difference between advocacy and campaigning, maybe. I'm
Yeah,
kind
so
of
I kind of tie them both up really. So in
mm,
2021 and 2022, I decided to do a month every month for 12 months, an event. And that was
yeah,
in my head, my awareness event campaign to get the
yeah,
conversation of child sex abuse heard. So I walked around the Isle of Wight. I did a English
wing,
Channel swim in my local swimming pool. I
yeah,
cycled on the river. I had a bike
yeah,
made for me, cycled along a paddleboard down the river. I obviously got on a plane and I did a wing
yeah,
walk.
yeah,
Every one of those challenges was something that I wanted to do as a fitness
mm,
addict and someone who loves taking challenges on
mm,
herself. And so I aligned them with my advocacy.
right,
Because if I go back to, half an hour ago, I learned in
yeah,
life it's important to do all the things that mean something and that you can get out of bed and feel passionate about. And that is one of
mm,
them. Um, and so I then made it my life mission for the rest of my life to do this. So that the campaigns are one of them. The advocacy is about challenging conversations and
right,
putting things out there. So, I know that not everybody likes my challenge, not everybody likes the challenging conversations. When I say all, I mean people who don't want to think laterally about complex situations from political world to other. But it's about saying, look, you put some thought into this, because actually the bigger change could happen from so many people who are leading us,
mm,
and significant figures. So
mm,
it's about challenging conversations. So I do my campaigns, I challenge conversations, I upset
mm,
a lot of people, I get into a lot of trouble for what I say. Um, but
yeah,
and that's fine, right? Because it keeps the
mm,
conversation going.
yeah,
I recently won an award for my advocacy as well, which has been a really special award, because this conversation never gets awards.
yeah,
And but of course, I have to balance that as well with my business. So, I need to be able
yeah,
to keep my business ticking over, and so, but what I'm finding is that it is crossing over a little bit now. So obviously
yeah,
my advocacy work does come into business, because I work with children. I work in
yeah,
the wellbeing industry.
yeah,
Lots of parents come to me,
yeah,
and so it's all kind of working together. And it's long days, long hours, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
no. It's and there's so much that you've kind of, I don't know, brought together there, and questions that people would have, like you say, it didn't derail your career. It's enhanced it. It pulls together. You've got these very clear strands in your life, and they're all complementary. And I guess you're being the truest, but I hate the term. I don't
Authentic
want to say
person.
authentic, yeah, but like
Yeah, I
you know,
am. I'm being authentic, and that's what I didn't think I was, and now I am.
yeah,
I wake up, I go to bed feeling. I don't feel like I've. There's nothing in me that, I think
yeah,
there was some years I thought, oh my goodness, I have a closet full of stories back from the days where I
mm,
was drinking and drug taking and I was the ultimate wild child party girl.
mm,
And I'm thinking, as I'm going on, someone's going to start sharing some of this stuff. And actually, do you know what? I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. I'm going to get it all out there, because
yeah,
because coming from coming from someone else becomes a gossip. Coming from me makes it authentic. I know you hate that word, but there's a reason I was behaving the way I was, and now
Yeah.
you know why.
Yeah.
And so actually it dampens down that fire, right? It dampens down
Yeah.
that fuel of someone going, oh yeah, we know EJ from when, you know, she did this,
Yeah.
that, and the other, you know. And like I say, I mean, most people thought I'd be dead or in prison by the time I was 20, but I shared all those. There's nothing in me I haven't shared. So
Yeah.
no one can say anything that's going to shock anyone anymore because I've done it.
Yeah. But I love that, like you say, you're kind of owning it, aren't you? You're saying, yeah, so what? This is actually what was going on. So would you like to have
Yeah,
an opinion about it
I
now?
absolutely, and I'm not
Mm,
proud of some of the things I did when I never hurt anybody actually,
no.
not intentionally, but um I wasn't proud of some of the things that I did as a youngster, but actually
Mm,
that was very reflective of where I was
yeah.
emotionally. And it was my way of coping.
Yeah. Um, Thinking about the future, um, now you have delivered like a keynote to NSPCC's annual gala fundraising ball.
Yes.
Um, you've done some big stuff in the past,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, like two years alone. What's coming next that you can share with people? What can you tell us?
So I'm really excited to share that very soon, well, fingers crossed, my charity will be launched.
Yeah,
And that's been a journey and a half because I come from a business where I come with a business head or entrepreneurial head where I'm like, right, if I want to go to Spain, if I want to become a hairdresser, if I want to do, I'm just going to
yeah,
do it. I'm just going to set it up. I'm going to throw some marketing at it, get the advertising out
yeah,
there, done it.
yeah,
It doesn't happen like that when you're trying to cross the line with a charity. And quite rightly so, there's a lot of in-depth um, requirements for you to set up.
mm,
Um, and so, you know, you go back to my boss, I've got to adhere to lots of things, but that's okay because I can move around with things like that. So we're near the end of setting up. We've been back and forth a few times with charity commissions, which apparently is quite normal. And
yeah,
obviously the charity is about reducing child sex abuse through education, awareness campaigns, protection. So obviously they do need to be tight on us
mm,
as a charity. That is the next big step. And also I've got of course something that I had published last year, which I have
mhm.
here. And this is a magazine. It was something that I'd been wanting to do for a very long time, The Real
Well,
Silence.
well,
And
congratulations.
but so my brother sadly passed away last year unexpectedly.
Yeah,
And after he died, one of the things, and I think we all find ways of coping. Now, I'm a very creative person, and I always have been, put it down to my performance, My Guy magazine shows, I don't know, whatever you want to put it down to. Um, Creativity has been something that has helped me through difficult times. So it's what I know.
yeah,
And so when my brother died unexpectedly, this is something I wanted to do. I thought, oh, probably the right time. So in my
oh,
hours of grief, I
yeah,
sat for hours and hours and hours, and I had my magazine published. So
wow.
this was published on the 1st of December. We're doing quarterly
Mhm.
um, um, publications. They are online, but what we want to do is get advertisers in and sponsors in because obviously this is an important movement for lots of businesses to align with because it shows what kind of business you are to align with these societal issues.
Mm.
So we can get some hard copies out there as well, and distributed around. So it's the charity and the magazine are the two things I can talk about. There's lots of other things coming in,
Yeah,
but they're my big focus really for the next sort of 6 months.
fantastic. And you have been helping to educate organizations as well. Is that right? Did I remember that
Yes.
correctly? Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is really important is that because I had a petition in Parliament for
Yes.
them to
Hmm.
fund survivors of child sex abuse in the workplace. And I recognise, you know, when I was in my 19s, 20s, one of the things I've learned through my years of advocacy and therapy is our brains develop in the late teens, early 20s. So traumas will start to resurface around this time. And that's kind of like when you should be flourishing in the workplace as a young 20-year-old. For me, I think even though Danker UK, they do great stuff, they did great stuff, it just wasn't for me. But also that's when all my resurfacing issues came, insecurities and delayed onset of PTSD. And I didn't know how to cope with it. Because you don't really want to talk about it as a 20-year-old, that you've got difficulties. And so you don't say anything and you suppress this. Now, if there were signposting around the office to say, look, you don't need to tell us if you've been sexually abused as a child, but if you are, we support you. These are numbers you can speak to, and just be more supportive of these conversations, because there's a hell of a lot of people out there who've been abused as children. A lot of them might go to their grave with it. And we don't want that. We want to help people release so they can flourish, so that they can live, so they can actively engage in their life without that feeling of feeling like I did, like I was this fraud in my world. So I've been connecting with businesses, trying to get them to address this in their workforce, by doing some safeguarding, giving them some products that can say that they have taken on board the conversations, that they do support it, and then these are the numbers and information that they can share to their workforce without anyone having to say, I'm a survivor of child sex abuse. So it's about recognition, and it's hard. I mean, it's a conversation that people don't really want to have. You know, when a case comes up, like any case, like you talk about Sarah Everard or Baby P, everyone's all over it. The media's all over it. The conversations are everywhere, social media, news, everywhere you go, and everyone's like, yeah, we're going to change, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's active, and then it starts slowing down because the next news items come in. The war started or something else, and it's not that they get forgotten, they just don't get that focus. And when you take that focus away, it really dampens down the flames on it for everybody else. So you might have 200 people working on projects to help those, and then when you've got the world with you, you've got millions of people with you, and then those millions of people now going onto the war, you've still got the 200 people here desperately trying to be heard, and they can't because now they're focusing on the war, or they're being something else in the royal family, or Harry's just put out another book. And so people get this core 200, 300, 400 thousands of people who are desperately trying to fight against the millions who are on the media side of the news items. It's hard. And so I keep going and encourage people to keep going, because you will be heard by somebody. Even if it's not the millions over here, you will be heard by someone in your network. And that's the most important thing, to never forget your network and your community, because they are the ones that will help you get messages out. So maybe one day you do become one of the big news items, and that's a really important message, I think, for all of us.
Where can people find you, EJ? How can they learn more?
Just find me on the web, www.emmajanetaylor.com. You'll find everything you need to know on there, all my links to all my social media. I'm on everything, so whatever you choose.
Omnipresent.
Whatever your social media fancy is, then just contact me, and I'll be there to support, help, signpost in any way I can. And if you want to join my campaigns and my advocacies and ambassadorships for my charities, I'd love to hear from you, because the more people involved, obviously, the better the conversations get.
Fantastic. Thank you, EJ.
Thanks, Tony.